Welcome to Politically Unstable with Charles Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor. I'm your host, Andy Parks, and I'd like to remind you that you qualify for a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times simply by going to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. Joining me now is Charles Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor. Hello, Charlie.
Hey, Andy. How you doing?
Doing just fine. One of your columns this week, Republican politicians still bitter at Trump over America First. I guess the Republican Party will never learn. It's if they don't really have Republicans at heart, but they want the money. I can attest to that. I get junk mail from them every day.
Yeah, it's really kind of astounding, and that's sort of nothing lays bare this point more than a situation like Afghanistan, where you not only do you see that, just kind of what's terrible about being focused about concerns that aren't the primary concerns of regular Americans in the first place, i.e. spending trillions of dollars remaking the Middle East for no real good reason. But it also reveals just how dangerous and terrible those false promises are for the people we're claiming to help in a place like Afghanistan. And not only does it disturb the American people, by not doing what it is that the American people actually want, but it actually hurts the people that you're running around claiming to help. It's like welfare, which is forced charity. Politicians love to do welfare because it makes them feel good to spend our money supposedly solving other people's problems by paying them not to work or all the things that welfare does. But what happens to the recipients of this largesse that we're forced to fork over? It's really bad, not just for a republic where politicians are supposed to work for us and carry out and do the things we want them to do, but it's also horrible for the people that the supposed recipients of the supposed largesse. It's like that famous line from Ronald Reagan: 7 most dangerous words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you."
Yeah. The party of the weak and spineless. That's the way I see the Republican Party right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there are so many tragic cases out of Afghanistan. And, you could sit here and weep over them for a lifetime. You spend a lifetime weeping over them. But again, American foreign policy is supposed to be carrying out America's interests, our own interests. The Trump Doctrine was America first. It's his foreign policy doctrine. It's his domestic policy doctrine. Everything is America first. Only in Washington would that become, would that be a controversial statement. Nowhere in the world would that be a controversial statement that America is going to make its foreign policy revolve around American interests. Or, for that matter, if you live in Pakistan, that Pakistani politicians would want their policies to be Pakistan first. But in our case, it should be America first. We're the only country that commits suicide every time we walk out the door, and we go, politicians run off trying to carry out other people's interests. And that's how you wind up with the disaster we have at the border, is that it's not an America first agenda. There are a lot of poor people, horrible cases trying to illegally come across our border. And not only that, a lot of them want to come to our country and work and thrive and raise a family, and they're good people, I'm sure. But coming in illegally is not the way to do that. And anyway, none of that matters. All that matters is, do we have control over our borders? Are we picking who we allow in our country and who we don't allow in our country? Because that's all that matters. We have borders. We're allowed to enforce them. In fact, it's imperative that we enforce them. And then you have all these, and I hear this from Republicans as much as I hear from Democrats, talking about the interpreters in Afghanistan. I care a lot about people, our allies. I do, a lot. But they don't take precedence over our America First agenda. They don't take precedence. We don't just let people in because somebody says that they helped us once. And I would love to trust our government, our State Department, to vet all the people trying to, all the quote-unquote interpreters who want to come into our country, who helped our soldiers. I would love to let all of them into the country. But, I mean, these are the same people who are, quote-unquote, vetting who's coming in on our southern border. Who believes that? It's all a lie. It's all a complete lie. And so they've completely ruined all credibility for us to believe that they know what they're doing, or that they're even willing to try to do what they're supposed to do. And instead, they're like, oh, you're hateful. You're a racist because you don't want to let all these interpreters in. Well, prove to me that they're interpreters, first of all. And I saw, it was so funny. There was a, I mean, as funny as anything can be in this situation. It was absurd. Somebody in the Biden administration was patting herself on the back about having set up like a spare bedroom for Afghan interpreters and their families to come to the United States. And she was so pleased with herself. And you know how people always say, they say, like, people when they work with homeless people, they say the number one thing homeless people want is socks. And I'm thinking, well, actually, they'd like a home, but okay, they want socks. And she was crying and patting herself on the back, and she was telling people, you know what the number one thing that our friends from Afghanistan that were relocating to the United States, you know what the number one thing they want? They need English to Farsi dictionary. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I thought you said they were interpreters. I would think the one thing that an interpreter in Afghanistan would know would be how to speak English.
Yes.
Right? Because that's kind of what they were doing, right? The absurdity of it didn't even follow in this one. I get, granted, in her defense, she was so busy patting herself on the back for setting up by the way, a miserable, it was like 3 bunk beds shoved in a spare closet in her house. She was patting herself on. How about year 3 of that situation?
Yeah.
How many people is this woman going to put in her closet? How great a life is that going to be for them?
Yeah.
People are disgusting.
It's unbelievable. You had another column, Biden blames Trump for exposing his career of carnage. Everything was okay in Afghanistan until Trump came along? How does any sane individual come up with that?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? You didn't realize that, did you?
No.
And this you know, this is the thing, and this is, oh, did you see that? The Associated Press the other day had a story, and I'm not making this up, had a story in the paper talking about how Joe Biden has always opposed the Afghanistan occupation. And he's been in Washington for 50 years, and he's been the great grand poobah of foreign policy. He was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee forever, before he got tapped by Obama to be his vice president for his foreign policy expertise, where he served for 8 years, presided over the debacle in Iraq and Afghanistan. But the AP story said, but really, Joe Biden was a quote-unquote outsider when it comes to getting his views heard. This guy was the second guy, supposedly the last guy in the room in the White House with every decision the commander-in-chief made. And then he's in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for longer than most of us have been alive, and yet he's an outsider. And I mean, it's like, and these are like supposedly legit. There were 2 AP reporters who wrote this story, and I'm just sitting there, and obviously they were instructed by the White House. The White House went to him. You know, Jen Psaki went to him and said, "You really got to do this, and you got to get the word outsider in there." And you know, and I'll give you some crumbs here and there. You know, she I don't know who was behind it, but whatever. That's how the story came about. And so they write this thing, and they actually refer to him as in like the second paragraph, as an outsider. Joe Biden, the outsider, when it comes to foreign policy. Good Lord. Not since Monica Lewinsky was in the Oval Office have we seen a performance like that by anybody in the White House.
Oh, man. Out of time for this week. Charlie, great to talk to you. Folks, you can read all of Charlie Hurt's columns at WashingtonTimes.com. See you, Charlie. Thanks.
Always good to talk to you, buddy.
Once again, thanks for listening to Politically Unstable with Charlie Hurt, opinion editor here at the Washington Times. Remember, you can read all of Charlie's columns at WashingtonTimes.com. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.